Hi, I'm Jay.
And I'm John.
And we're Bucket List Travellers.
And we're coming to you from Dubrovnik, Croatia. We're starting our Dubrovnik walking tour today, overlooking the west harbour of Dubrovnik. The first structure that you saw was Fort Lovrijenak, or the St. Lawrence Fortress.
It's a fortress and theatre outside the western wall of the city. Now, what's really interesting about this fort is that the Venetians in the early 11th century were planning to build a fort on this very location. But while they were going back home to get building materials, the locals actually managed to build a fort on this location in only 3 months. And since then, they've obviously restructured it and rebuilt it a few different times to what the structure is today. But good on them for getting in first.
The St. Lawrence Fortress was also the location of the Red Keep in Game of Thrones, and the Dubrovnik West Harbour that you saw at the start was also the location of Blackwater Bay as well as King's Landing Harbour. So we're now approaching the Ploče Gate, which is the main entrance into the Old Town. You may notice that there's a statue on the top of the arch. That is Saint Blaise, or Sveti Vlaho, and that's the patron saint of Dubrovnik.
This city gate was built in 1537 and it originally had a drawbridge that was raised every night to keep the city safe.
We're now walking downstairs towards the inner gate that was first built in 1460, and Game of Thrones fans will remember this location as the scene where Joffrey got manure thrown at his face. We're now at the main pedestrian walkway of Dubrovnik Old Town, so it's known as the Stradun.
And you can see this big structure, this circular structure here. This is known as Big Onofrio's Fountain. It was built in 1438 and it's one of 2 fountains that are part of the aqueduct to the city. So from here you can see the Walls of Dubrovnik. Now they are a very popular attraction in Dubrovnik. They do cost money to climb on the walls. It costs 250 kuna for adults, which is around 33 euro or 35 US dollars.
Dubrovnik's had a really colourful history.
Yeah, so it was historically known as Ragusa, and it dates back to the 7th century.
Yeah, so during its time, it's had shifting powers in control of it. So for a long time, it was under the protection of the Byzantine Empire, and then later, the sovereignty of the Republic of Venice. Between the 14th and 19th centuries, Dubrovnik ruled itself as a free state. And the prosperity of the city was based on maritime trade, which makes sense because it's right next to the ocean. And it was at its peak between the 15th and 16th centuries. Now, the city has had its ups and downs as well. So the entire city was almost destroyed by an earthquake in 1667.
Yeah, and then since then it's had its fair share of power struggles. So it's been occupied by France, it's been part of the Austrian Empire, and then part of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia before becoming part of Croatia.
And most recently, in 1991, during the Croatian War of Independence, Dubrovnik was heavily bombed for a period of 7 months, and so it sustained a lot of damage.
Yeah, there's a museum and memorial in the Sponza Palace which details the damage that was done during that time and also the lives that were lost. And it's a really moving tribute to the people of that time.
Yeah, and if you look around different parts of the city, there's still evidence of the bombing that took place at that time. Dubrovnik Old Town is just so pretty. We just love the stone buildings. There's a lot of restaurants that cater to all types of tourists, and the tourist infrastructure is really strong. And it's no surprise that this is one of the hottest destinations in the world for travel.
Yeah, we came in May and it was very popular with tourists. It didn't feel too overcrowded, like there were a lot of people around, but you could still find space throughout the city, which was quite nice.
Now, that may not be the same story at the height of the tourist season in July and early August. I think it would be a lot busier.
That structure that you can see right at the end of the promenade is the Dubrovnik Bell Tower. This structure is 31 metres high, or 102 feet, and it was built in 1444.
After a particular earthquake, it had lost its stability, and it had a Leaning Tower of Pisa feel for quite a while. However, it was rebuilt in 1929 because it was in danger of falling. This square in front of the bell tower is known as Lucia Square, and it's a very popular venue for festivals, such as the Dubrovnik Summer Festival.
Now, to the left of the square, you have the Sponza Palace, which we mentioned previously. That's where there's currently an exhibition about the bombings that happened in Dubrovnik in the 90s. And the palace was actually built in the Renaissance style in the 1500s.
The palace has served a number of functions over the years. It's been a customs office, it's been an armory, treasury, mint, school, bank. The atrium area also served it as a trading centre and a business meeting place. These days, it's mainly archives. On our left, you've got another popular attraction of Dubrovnik Old Town. It's called the Rector's Palace. These days, it houses a museum, and its facade is depicted on the reverse of the Croatian 50 kuna banknote. Straight ahead of us, you have the Dubrovnik Cathedral, also known as the Assumption of the Virgin Mary Cathedral. The cathedral in its current form was built way back in the 12th century.
And part of the money for the cathedral was contributed by English King Richard the Lionheart. He actually survived a shipwreck in the nearby island of Lokrum, and as a thank you, he gave some money to fund this cathedral.
In subsequent centuries, the cathedral has been rebuilt after a number of earthquakes. It was largely destroyed in the earthquake of 1667, as well as 1979.
So Croatia is prone to earthquakes, and we actually felt one while we were there.
Yeah, in the island of Harbour. So there was in a neighbouring country, in Bosnia, a 6.3 earthquake, but it was only a bit of a tremor for us. So when you are travelling in Croatia, be prepared and forewarned that earthquakes do happen.
So you can see an open air market in the square in front of us. There are so many open air markets in Croatia, and they're wonderful places to visit. You can find some great fresh produce, great local atmosphere. Sometimes you can get some souvenirs as well.
And just making our way past the Old Town Market, there are a bunch of further restaurants, and directly ahead of us are the Jesuit steps, as well as the St. Ignatius Church and the Jesuit school.
Yeah, so the church was completed in 1725 and opened in 1729. And you may recognise the Jesuit steps as a very famous filming location from Game of Thrones. This is where Cersei walked down the stairs on her walk of shame.
And you will find that a number of the restaurants there are capitalising on the walk of shame notoriety. So, for example, there's a shame burger, which is €18. I think that's shameful in itself.
Yeah, you better hope that that's a big burger and you feel shameful after eating it.
Oh, for sure. The St. Ignatius Church is considered to be one of the finest Baroque set of buildings in Dubrovnik, and perhaps all of Dalmatia. So it's not surprising that theatre directors at the Dubrovnik Summer Festival often use this area as an open-air stage.
And we actually ate at a really great restaurant around here called Bistro Kopun. So we'll be making a Croatian food vlog about our experiences there, as well as eating a lot of beautiful Croatian food. So if you're interested in seeing more Croatian videos, then don't forget to subscribe.
We're now jumping you through to the Ploče Gate, which is coincidentally the end of Cersei's walk of shame in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, so this is another entrance to the old town, and it's right near the old port as well. It's a beautiful entrance to the old town.
Yeah, and this was built at the end of the 14th century. And in the same way to the other gate that we first went through, this bridge used to be just a wooden drawbridge that used to pull up at night to prevent unwelcome guests. You will find that this entrance is not as busy as the other entrance, and you can get some amazing vistas out over to the old port. It's really pretty.
Yeah, definitely bring your camera when you come to Dubrovnik, because it is just such a picturesque town.
For those of you who love the nightlife, we just passed the culture club Revelin, which is a very fancy nightclub. The club's set inside the Revelin fortress, which would give it a really cool and unique atmosphere. The bridge that we're on now is the Revelin Bridge, and it's also a great vantage point to look over at the old port.
One handy thing to know if you're planning to visit Croatia soon is that the national currency is about to change. The kuna is the currency of Croatia currently, so in 2022. However, on the 1st of January 2023, it will become the euro. So Croatia is adopting the euro, and currently a few places are starting to accept the euro as well as the kuna.
On our right, we have the Dominican Monastery. So the monastery dates all the way back to the 14th century, and it's now a museum that displays numerous exhibits of religious art from Dubrovnik and beyond.
And the beautiful stairs in front of the monastery have also been used in a number of scenes from Game of Thrones. So if you're interested in coming to Dubrovnik yourself, Dubrovnik has its own airport, so it's really easy to get to. And Dubrovnik is just a short ferry ride away from some beautiful Croatian islands. We highly recommend the islands of Harbour and Korčula, and we've got videos of both of those destinations if you're interested in checking them out.
And Dubrovnik's just across the border from Montenegro. So Montenegro is going to be our next travel series, so it's coming up soon, so make sure you stay tuned for that. The old town of Dubrovnik, you can just spend hours going through all the nooks and crannies of the town and just losing yourself in the atmosphere.
Yeah, it's got some beautiful alleyways and it's just spectacular from every single angle.
We're now arriving at the old port of Dubrovnik, and it's such a pretty area.
Yeah, this is just gorgeous. Lots of restaurants and cafes around here as well, and just beautiful views of the waterfront.
Yeah, and this is where you can get boats to the island of Lokrum nearby.
On Lokrum Island, you can visit botanical gardens, a Benedictine monastery, and there are plenty of spots to swim, sunbathe, and snorkel. Just be mindful, there is a naturalist beach on the island as well. Look out for the FKK sign.
We hope you enjoyed our walking tour of Dubrovnik Old Town. If you did, make sure you give it a like and leave us a comment.
We are Bucket List Travellers.
See you next time.